Hello, all. Thank you for tuning in to South Asian Documentary Film Festival. It is an online programming that focuses on films and filmmakers across South Asia and the globe, shedding light on important topics relating to climate change, socio-political discourses, and culture. Today, we are joined by Mahera Omar for a Q&A session. Mahera Omar is a filmmaker and co-founder of Pakistan Animal Welfare Society, a nonprofit that advocates biodiversity protection, environmental justice, and compassion towards sentient beings. Her film have exhibited in Pakistan as well as international film festivals, including at Film South Asia, Istanbul International Architecture and Urban Film Festival, and Delhi International Film Festival. Highlights of her filmography include Perween Rahman, The Rebel Optimist, and the Dream Journeys musical travelogues. With an abiding interest in Karachi, its environment, plants, and animals that share the city with its 20 million inhabitants, she works to document ecosystems that shape Karachi today. Welcome, Mahira. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having screened my film and talking to me today.
Yeah, a
It's an honor.
pleasure. A pleasure. We will be screening your film at the last weekend of this March, but we are recording it ahead of that. But yeah, but I just watched your film. It's such a powerful and such a lovely portrayal, and we will definitely be asking you questions about that. Now, for our panel, now we are also joined by Jyotika Virdi. She is an associate professor in the Department of Communication, University of Windsor in Ontario, Canada. She is the author of Cinematic Imagination, Social History Through Indian Popular Films. Her analysis of Indian popular cinema is a mode of reading India's social and cultural history. Her book is used by instructors teaching courses on Indian cinema. Welcome, Professor Virdi. How are you?
Thanks.
Yeah, we are also joined by Professor Jane Koo. So Jane Koo is an associate professor of Women's and Gender Studies program and of sociology at the University of Windsor and holds a PhD in sociology and equity study from University of Toronto. Dr. Koo's academic and research interests emphasize community activism, feminism, and anti-racism. How are you, Professor Jane?
I am good, thank you.
Yeah. So before we begin, I'm just also in the interest of introducing everyone. So lastly, my name is Anushre. I'm a filmmaker, media artist, educator, and writer based in Vancouver, BC. Currently, I'm teaching film, media arts, and photography courses at the University of the Fraser Valley and LaSalle College here in Vancouver, BC. My art and research areas are South Asia, India specifically. So my work can be accessed online as part of the community organization that I run, South Asian Creative Project. All right, so I feel enough about me. So I would like to invite Professor Virdi to ask Mahira some questions about her film, Perween Rahman, The Rebel Optimist, which we will be showing as we close this festival around the last weekend of this month. That's March 2025.
Right, right. Well, thanks, Anushra, for
Mhm.
that. And thank you, Mahera, for agreeing to do this interview, which we would like people to be able to click on alongside the film screening, which, we try to pick the best films for for both the opening and for the closing of the festival. And we have to tell you that we screened your film some years ago, maybe the first time we ran this festival. This was
Mhm.
before the pandemic when we did in-person screenings. And I recall we did it as part of the March 8th, the International Women's Day sort of celebration. It was tied to a class, and we don't get to see the films before we screen them. So had no idea what to expect. We had just read the description and we chose it. And I have to say, we were blown away by it. And that's why we decided when we asked for a few more films to fill our programming this year, we asked for this one as well. And so thanks for showing up as this additional sort of this bonus that we're offering our audiences, which is an interview with the film director. I don't think we've done this before. But I noticed that this film next year will mark its 10th year, right? It was made in 2016. Uh,
Uh, yes, 2016 it was.
Right. So it'll be a decade next year. So and I have to say that, as you know, I teach film and as part of our work, we just watch a lot of films. And but for something in this day and age when we're so saturated with films and documentaries that we view, that something like your film that has a lasting effect, that you remember it, says something about the film and you as a filmmaker. So my first question is, is obviously a lot of curiosity about how you found this topic, I don't want to give away for those who might watch the interview first and then go to the film. I don't want to give away too much about the film, but I'm curious about how you came by this topic. What's the backstory to this film? And then, more questions about your process and things like that would interest viewers.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for such kind words about the film, and I'm really touched that um you guys have watched so many films, and that you're saying this one stood out. And another thing, you were saying you were looking for a few more films, so it just so happens my social media handles are a few more films.
That's interesting.
Yes, it's been it will be 10 years. The film first screened at the Orangi Pilot Project office uh, on Perween's birthday to a full house. And there was not a single dry eye in the hall because it was mostly her colleagues and people she knew, residents of Orangi. Um, well, I had met Perween several years ago through a friend, and it was, I mean, the very first meeting, she was she was so special. She would make you feel special, and she would take an interest in whatever you're doing. And she was already doing so much work for the people of Orangi and Karachi in general. So we spoke about a few things the first time we met, and actually we she was very kind-hearted. We spoke about growing vegetables, having community gardens, and I mentioned to her how we're trying to inculcate the values of kindness and compassion towards all sentient beings, dogs in particular, who have it pretty hard on the streets of Karachi. And despite all the work that she would be doing, she was so supportive. She said, let's introduce a mass vaccination spay neuter project in Orangi. And I believe that really stood out because she was just looking at all aspects of society. So anyways, then some time went by, and then um, I believe I did this other documentary called City by the Sea, which was about Karachi's coastal development. And so I interviewed her for that. And then so I had this 1 hour long interview from maybe like 2009, and I use only parts of it having to do with the coast um, that I used in that film. But those were like brief moments. And then somehow somewhere down the line, I became interested in Karachi's sewage system and wanted to explore that. And it just so happens she was working on this big sanitation project in Orangi, in the neighborhood of Orangi, where there are like 2 million plus people. And the film, has a whole section on how she changed people's lives, and uh, how she enabled people to clean up their own neighborhoods, because obviously nothing was happening. Um, so anyways, this is something we were talking about, and she was on board, and we were going to like make this feature length documentary on the the sewage system, and what happens till the point where it reaches untreated into the sea, and all the shocking details she discovered about Karachi not having any maps and all of that stuff. And then it was 2013, and the last time I met her was at the Karachi Literature Festival. And I remember she just held my hand, my arm, and then she wouldn't let go. It's like, despite all the people that she was surrounded by, she just made you feel special and encouraged you in your work, and you just felt connected to her. And it wasn't just me; like everyone I met later in her neighborhood, just felt like she was hers. She was their sister. She would always give them so much time and sit with them and meet them at their level. Well, little did I know that I would end up making a film about her instead. And that occurred to me when I believe I was at one of the talks at the Arts Council in Karachi, and there was everyone on stage just telling, stories about her, what they remembered about her, and stories and moments. And as I watched people come to the stage one by one, sitting in the audience, for me, like a film was playing in my head. I was like, I would like, I would like other people to also listen to, her loved ones' memories of her, because she was not even one in a million. She was one in a billion, and she was known as the mother of Karachi. So then eventually this film got made. There was a little bit of archival material, and then the interview that I had done really came in handy, because in the film she's talking, herself. There's no voiceover. So the film got made, and then yeah.
So you're saying that it began after 2013, after she passed away. So is when but you already knew about her and her work, etc. So what I find really interesting is that it uses the biopic, which is very unusual in a documentary, but the way you use it to, to focus, it's not, yeah, you get to know about her and her personality, but about the work she was doing, and the way, it's built as this. I was also curious about how you came up with the structure of telling the story, which is it sort of it unfolds sort of like a mystery, like a detective story, and I thought that was fascinating for a documentary, because you suddenly there's this revelation that uh, again, for those who are watching the interview before they watch the film, I thought it was a very interesting style in which you structured it. So the process of your research and how you decided to structure it is my second and last question, and I'll let other people ask their questions.
Well, thank you for noticing that. It was very organic. Uh, we throughout the process we collected like some material, and we found out that there's not much archival material. Like we went to some TV channels, and like literally only one or two very brief like videos I found from there. I thought there would be like a treasure trove of these long interviews and whatnot. So we had very limited material, but I think she's brought to life by her loved ones and colleagues. They paint this picture, and I remember the what I did this little small screening at my house, and somebody knew her brother, uh, one of her brothers, and he was there in the audience. Now he was someone who really knew Perween, and he was like at the end. I wasn't sure how he would take it, but he just said one thing at the end of the film, which was that you really brought out Perveen's personality, and this is who she was. And so, well, my editor and I, my editor Talha, we sat for a few months, and throughout the film, I mean, we had some original music, composed for it, and some I think is like classical music. And we just started putting sequences together, and we would move them around all the time. And then it was like, well, how do we start? And it just fell in place that uh, her sister's garden is some place where she would spend a lot of time, and I believe it starts in the garden and then goes on to the beach. But I don't want to give too much away, um, but there's also like we would listen to what she's saying, because like they say na, wo unki zabani hai, like it's in her own words. We don't really add anything to it. Um, she talks about, it's also very much a film about Karachi. You really
Yeah,
get to learn
yeah,
about the city
yeah,
and its issues. And
yeah.
although this was 10 years ago that people first saw this film, but the same issues are
Mm.
there today. And we only touched upon a little bit of her work. It's not all her work. Um, and of course, she was under the mentorship of the founder of the Orangi Pilot Project. Um, but the sequences, we would keep shifting them. We knew, okay, we want to talk about like her education, and then also when her sister talks about the water situation and something that Perween saw. I just by chance happened to capture those things. My camera is on all the time. There are a lot of like sit down interviews, which I wish it was like more natural that way. But that's okay. That's how the film is. I was mostly like filming alone. Like I was alone with her sister in the car, so I think then people feel comfortable. We would always just be like one or two people, having people talk about this very difficult thing. Um, so yeah, my editor was like instrumental. We would sit and brainstorm, and the amazing thing is, we would be so inspired by what she's saying, and we would listen to it on repeat. That every night, some sentence of hers would be, going through her head. How she spoke about the youth, and their issues, and also like people who are feeling down or suffering from depression, how the beach, having access to nature, is so important. And so I think even to this day, some of her sentences and the things that she would notice are very much there. I think something about her just touches each and every one of us, wherever we may be in the world. And so that's why maybe people, remember, because Karachi does have a lot of issues, but then probably every city does to a certain extent. Uh, so yeah, we somehow put the structure together, and the
Yes,
mood changes a little bit. It goes from one thing to the other,
yeah,
to the other. And someone said it has a lot of layers, so I guess it just probably we were not consciously thinking about it, but we just put it together however it felt best. You're going from one mood and one sort of train of thought to the other. uh, and lots of people said lots of very interesting and nice things, but we couldn't have like while editing one person talking for too long or 5 minutes, so we would just have to uh, get the sound bites and cut them. So editing the interviews, and we couldn't of course fit in everyone that we interviewed. That was really tough. The I think the timeline was 3 hours long, and the hardest part is like removing stuff.
yeah, yeah. Cutting it short. So, Anisha, do I have time for just one follow-up question, real
So yeah,
quick?
please, yeah,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead,
then,
please
so
go ahead.
that just I just thought that to me, what was central was, of course, the story of water that she worked on and the water mafia. And we then didn't get a sense of what happened. Like, what's the follow-up? Because clearly she was challenging. Too many vested interests. So you make a very clear suggestion over there what happened to her but we don't really find out, whether there was a follow-up, an investigation, whether guilty, whether people who were culpable sort of caught, did her story create a stir in Karachi because of all her work, or is she just one person who just got swept away because of the very daring work that she was doing around water rights?
Um, yes, absolutely. There was a big fight for many years for justice for Perween, but it was our conscious decision to not include any of that in the film. And that's something that people can look up and find out about. Um, so yeah, I can, only talk about the film.
Okay. Are you thinking of doing a follow-up about the investigation about her death and what happened after, or the justice for Parveen? Will there be a sequel?
Uh, well, I think the what I was thinking of before, I would like to follow up on part of her work, the sanitation aspect of it, uh, covering the entire city of Karachi, because she mapped not only just Orangi but the entire city, and that's how she found that untreated sewage was going to the sea, and it's a huge problem. It's destroying our ecosystems. I also go exploring the creeks around Karachi and the mangrove forest quite a bit. And recently, I went to this island very near the coast, and we picked up like a lot of trash, like glass bottles and other plastic waste from there. So the gar it really interests me to like cover the story, and I believe that would be it's all part of Parveen's work because she has her organization worked on it, and they suggested solutions to clean up the city and fix the
Right.
drainage system. And
Right.
as you know, the city floods now every time it rains a bit. So how is all of that going to get fixed? So every year people are thinking about that, but they're not thinking so much about the toxic waste that her city is drowning in and is surrounded by. Uh, so, like from near the city's waters, we fishermen catch this fish which they call kachara fish. It's got like lead, arsenic, mercury, and then that fish, small fish, is dried and fed to poultry, and then we consume it. Um, so it's all so connected. So I
Right.
believe that if I can sort of make a film about
Right.
that, that would be a very
Justice. Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be justice for Parveen for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I just love the way you focalize. You use her story to get at wider issues. In this case, water. And I have read about your other work, and I know about. I just read about it. So and that you're working on coastal areas and environmental degradation in that part. But thank you for your film, and I'm happy that we're getting a second chance to screen it for our festivals. But I'll let other people ask their questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Ritika, for these wonderful questions. Professor Jain, would you like to jump in and ask Mahira a question or two? I think you're on mute. All right, maybe. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I suppose I can ask for the purpose of our viewers who might be anticipating what to expect. What has been some of the responses to the film? Is there any particularly interesting response that you might have got for the film?
Oh gosh, yes. The film, there were, I, let me recollect. Uh, I believe that a lot of young people watching the film would say that they really loved the film, but that they learned a lot about Karachi, and they weren't really aware of really any of these issues. So it was generally for young people, it's education about their own city. Uh, and then other people, I think, I think they get surprised and taken aback. They're just touched by Perveen's warmth um, and some people just keep going back to the film because there's so many different issues covered in the film that she was working on that it's kind of like a refresher each time. Um, so the film has been online, and I think there's a lot of comments on it, but
Mhm.
I haven't seen them recently. Uh, but I hope people like the film, and it's sort of like an evergreen film.
Hmm.
Even the one that I made before, which is about land reclamation, and well, I live by the sea, like very just 5 minutes from it. Um, so yeah, we worry about our city and how we can make it more livable and greener, have less concrete. And increasingly, our city is really heating up. So these are just some of the things that I think about, and I wish that Parveen was still around because we would pick her brains and you know come up with some fun projects. Uh, she was all about growing your own vegetables, and she was introducing that idea to the people of Rangi. These things are really important because somehow we think if we live in a city, we can't grow our own vegetables. So says who?
Mhm.
We should grow them in our gardens and in community parks. So so yeah, these are all awesome ideas that she had, and we would like to continue talking about them and making little films about how to make Karachi more livable, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Jane, for the question. Since you mentioned about the YouTube comments, since I was going through some of them, they were lovely. And people were really inspired about the work. And also, there was this comment that people were mentioning that 3 years ago, Google, they paid tribute to Parveen. So they did mention that
Yes.
as well there. So I'm really happy that there is a conscientious effort of preserving her legacy. Since I want to round up this conversation, because we just have 5 to 6 minutes left with this meeting. I want to ask you, Mahera, that we talked about Perween Rahman's legacy, and you mentioned young people across Pakistan and also the growing South Asian diaspora, Pakistani Indian diaspora, because the story of Karachi is similar to a lot of cities in India. That's what I feel, because these are some of the issues that a lot of cities across South Asia are facing. So, do you think young people in 2025, do you think they know about Perween Rahman's work and also work by social activists like her? And also, do they know that how she was in a way silenced through this devastating assassination? Is that a story that is vividly in memory in Pakistan?
I believe so. Uh, I mean, young people had a way of making their way towards her uh, and seeking her out and learning from her. Uh, so yeah, I've met many people who were like, "Oh, we went to see her about this, or we were learning about uh, some issue," and then they would be sent to Parveen. Um, and in fact, when I was making some other films, then if I would approach someone or the other, they would be like, well, why don't you go to Parveen? And so it seems like a lot of young people, especially in educational institutes, would be going to her or to her organization and spending some time over there.
Mm,
Um, so, and I believe the institution still plays an instrumental
mm-hmm,
role, and it's a hub for learning, not only for projects in Pakistan but
mm-hmm,
around the world.
mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
the, the
Thank you so
Orangi
much.
Pilot
Mm,
model would be replicated in other
mm-hmm,
regions as well. So
mm-hmm.
yes, a
As
lot of people learn from it.
Yeah, as I did mention that the story of Karachi and the story of Perween Rahman's struggle echoes to what I've seen in the city that I grew up in, New Delhi. I can definitely see the parallels between the struggles in cities across South Asia, and I feel social activism and also, again, I want to just sort of commend your efforts as a filmmaker because I feel to tell a story like this also requires courage and bravery. So congratulations on that. Since you're wrapping the session up, Professor Jyotika, Professor Jane, any concluding remarks?
Just that, I'm looking forward to seeing this again, and I'm frantically sending out messages reminding other people to tune in for this closing event. And we look forward to future films that you'd be doing. So keep us posted. Clearly they're relate to the environment, and I personally just appreciate the way you navigate this terrain, and particularly in this film, as like I said, it felt like it was structured like a mystery thriller detective kind of a film. So, but suddenly there's this revelation of what happens to the central character. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to viewing it again this weekend at the end of this month.
No, thank you. It's interesting you say it was like a journey on some, detective work, and you find out about things later and you put different pieces together. So I'm currently working on a film on maybe that's why I have a cough, uh, on air pollution in Pakistan.
Mm,
Um, and I want it to be like a journey and adventure and
mhm,
sort of an immersive film, a fun film, although it's a very serious issue because it's the air we breathe and it's not clean.
mm,
And I think I've been coughing throughout this um, interview.
mhm,
But even though I'm in another country at the moment, but yeah, I just want to mention also that the systems that were set up for the people of Orangi, the founder of Orangi, Akhtar Hameed Khan Saab, was instrumental, and it was through his teachings that Perveen learned so much, and also through her mentor Arif Hassan Saab, who sent her to the Orangi Pilot Project. So without these two people, um, Perveen, I mean, she learned a lot from them, and she followed their legacy.
And she was a fine protege, and you've done
Yes.
great work in sort of honoring her work and her mentor's work. Congratulations. It's really a very fine documentary.